Okay, so turning to Thursday, and where we looked at navigating IP underwriting as part of IPOR, we heard during the week about all the different tools that advisors can and do use to make that process as smooth as possible. Um, so do you use similar tools for business protection?
Yeah, so yes, we do, is the answer. The main one is CI Expert.
Hmm.
It's obviously a very well known and very useful tool.
Yeah,
If we're ever replacing any kick, then we will use that to make
yeah,
sure that it is better. And then there's a conversation piece. So, client last month, they had some legal and general critical illness cover for a key person policy already.
yeah.
And we looked at the Vitality times three sick
Hmm.
product. And it was about 25% better, which was great.
Yeah,
But the cost was about 70% more expensive. So then you
okay.
can have a conversation and just say, look, obviously it's better. That makes
Yeah,
sense. It's a more budget contract compared to a really comprehensive one.
yeah,
But so much more expensive. Do you want them? And then again, the trust is there because you're saying these. This is what I found. It's not you must take
yeah,
this out because it's better. It's there's
yeah,
a conversation between the two.
yeah,
That's probably the main one we use. We have used Protection Guru as well.
yeah.
Um, Underwrite Me, unfortunately, at the moment at least, isn't as suitable because it doesn't have business product on there.
Right.
Um,
Okay. So would
I
you
mean,
say,
yeah, go on.
what would you
Sorry.
say the key differences between underwriting for individual IP and business protection are? Is it easier? Is there less scrutiny for business protection, or it's different?
No, not really. I mean, on the medical side, it's the same. Obviously, the
Yeah,
underlying person is exactly the same. There's a bit more that we need to do about income to make sure
yeah,
that if we're covering salary and dividends, it's done the right way because obviously you can cover NI on there, and the NI will be different if you're earning 50 grand. All salary is going to be very different if it's the base
yeah,
amount and then the rest is dividends,
yeah,
and also the employer's pension contribution that you can cover through there. You've got to make sure that it's an employer's contribution, not an employee's contribution, but also you've got to make sure that the client is actually going to maintain those payments, similar to how they're going to maintain the income, right?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
if we've had it before, IT contractor been set up 3 years, hadn't because they were new, they hadn't wanted to set up a pension immediately. In year three, they've set it up, and this particular chap was contributing 4.5 grand a month into his
mhm,
pension. Now, obviously, that's not particularly sustainable unless you're
yeah,
working long hours, which he
yeah,
was. But he was making the most of his allowance from previous years. So that was
yeah,
actually going to drop to somewhere in the region of 1,500. So we did
yeah,
1,500 instead, and just
yeah,
instead of, to be fair, we wouldn't have been able to cover the 4.5 anyway because it was beyond the percentage cap that you're allowed to do through the
yeah.
insurers. But we could have covered more than 1,500. But that's where he said, actually, that will be where it settles.
So
It's
he's
not
going to
going to be at
land.
this
Yeah,
level. Yeah, because otherwise, you're protecting him for something that maybe in a couple of years or even a year drops, and then he's
yeah,
paying loads extra for a couple of grand more, whatever, 3 grand more in this case, that he wouldn't
yeah,
be able to benefit from.
yeah, yeah. That's a good point. So any top tips then for underwriting from business protection point of view, or do you think you've covered that?
Make sure you do your due diligence, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh yeah.
Because, I mean, for us, and I'm sure this is for anyone who's watching this and the
Mm,
vast majority of the market, the worst thing that could happen is a client comes back and says, "You didn't do this properly.
yeah,
I've got a problem with you. We're going to, make you a formal complaint or something like that." So we want to make sure everything's documented, everything's explained,
yeah,
they're fully clear of what they've got. I mean, probably our suitability report is overkill, but the base
hmm,
version's 8,000 words, and it's
yeah,
it's boring, but it's important because if we go back to it and we've made a load of recommendations, 20 policies or something like that,
yeah,
in 5 years' time, who's going to remember the exact details and exactly why you made that recommendation?
yeah.
Um, so I'll just say, yeah, due diligence is probably the top tip there.